Okay, so this is the second year in the Rebbe's Maimer Vata Tetzave. We're holding Ois Dalid on page Kuf Lamed. It's in Sefer Mamorim, look at Vav, or if you have the Rebbe's Mamorim the way they're printed in according to the month of the year, so it's an Adar. We'll do a short summary of what we learned so far in the Maimer. So first of all, this mimer deserves quite an introduction, like we discussed in the first year. It's miyused on a very famous mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the mimer of the Kibbel HaYehudim, which the Frierdiker Rebbe said in Mamish in Mesiris Nefesh Dika Eifen. Sai the Etzem saying the mimer was Mesiris Nefesh, like we discussed last week, and also the things that the Frierdiker Rebbe demanded in the mimer was all about Mesiris Nefesh. And the Rebbe's Maimer, which is Miyusud, which is based on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer, is of course the last Maimer Leisata for the time being that the Rebbe was Magia. And not only was the Rebbe Magia, the Rebbe handed it to all of the Chassidim. So it's a very, and as the last Maimer that the Rebbe gave to us, we understand that it's a very special Maimer that we're supposed to use in the time that we're living now, where we can't see the Rebbe Begashmias. And to get to the time where we could see the Rebbe Begashmis because of the Amenu. So the Maimer, you could say a lot of things about the Maimer, and in general, it's not wise for somebody to come to Das Tachten and to try to put a certain seer and say this is what the Rebbe's Maimer is. But I'll call upon him for whatever it's worth in helping us understand the Maimer. We'll try a little bit at least. So you could say that this Maimer talks about Emunah, the Emunah of a Yid. And how, in other words, the emunah of a yid is the deepest part of a yid. It's the heart of a yid. It's his core. It's his essence. His emunah in the Eibishter. And in this Maimer, the Rebbe discusses how what's in the essence of a yid could actually permeate every single part of his existence. And we're going to see what that means. And along with that, the Rebbe explains to us what the role of a Rebbe is. And especially what the role of a Rebbe is in Emunah, because Emunah, every single Yid has Emunah, like we'll see soon in the Maimer. So what role is necessary for a Rebbe? Yidin Adach B'nei Ma'aminim B'nei Ma'aminim. Okay, so the Maimer will just do in the pnim of the Maimer of the Rebbe is based on the pasuk Va'ata Tetzave. So the pasuk Va'ata Tetzave says, Va'ata Tetzave Yu Moshe Rabbeinu should command the Bnei Yisrael, the Yidden, and they should bring to you pure olive oil, kasis lamor, crushed for the menorah, lahalis ner tamid, so that there should be a constant or eternal flame. And Rebbe asks in the Maimer, the lashon of Ata Tetzave. These are questions that originate yet with one of the Talmudim of the Maggid, brought down by the Tzemach Tzedek. That the Ata Tetzave is a very strange lashon. That you, Moshe Rabbeinu, should command is very uncommon. It's quite unique. It's actually unique, probably. Usually it says Tzavas B'nei Yisrael, command the Yidden, or Daber el B'nei Yisrael, or Emoir Lahem. What is this lashon Tetzaveh that you should command it? Secondly, the difference isn't only in that it's a strange lashon Va'ata Tetzaveh. It's also a difference in the meaning of the lashon. Va'ata Tetzaveh, and you should command them, makes it sound like that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who's telling them to do it, which is of course not the case. The Eibishter is telling them to do it, and merely Moshe Rabbeinu is merely giving over to the Yidden the commandment of the Eibishter, but it's not him who's commanding them to do it. It's the Eibishter, the Mitzvah HaMitzvahs. That's the first question. The second question is, why do the Yidden have to bring the olive oil to Moshe Rabbeinu? V'yikchu elecha. Aaron HaKohen is the one who's in charge of the menorah, who lights the menorah. L'chura, they should have brought the olive oil to Aaron. And even if you're going to want to say that B'Poel Mamish, they brought the things to Moshe Rabbeinu, from this that the pasuk says specifically, "V'yikchu elecha," they should bring the olive oil to you, is mashma that there's something very essential over here. There's a deep meaning and understanding in this. V'yikchu elecha, they should bring the olive oil to Moshe. So the olive oil is in Aaron HaKohen's department. What's the meaning that they have to bring it to Moshe Rabbeinu? The third question is, when it says kasis lamoyer, that the olive oil should be crushed for the menorah, why does the pasuk use the lashon moyer? If we're talking about the menorah, so say the menorah. If you want to say a lashon of light, so say kasis lahoyer, that it should give light. What's this lashon kasis lamoyer? For the luminary, for the source of light. This luminary, the source of light, is the menorah l'chura. So say menorah. That's how I understand the question. That doesn't specify what he should have said differently. But what he's saying is that Lamoir, he should have just said Lahoir. If he wants to talk about light, say Lahoir. If you want to talk about the menorah, Lahoir, say the menorah. But you want to talk about light, say Lahoir, not Lamoir for the source of light, for the luminary. And the final question is Lahalis Ner Tamid. The pasuk immediately afterwards says Me'erev ad Boker, that the mitzvah of the menorah is that it should burn, it should light from evening until morning. But over here in this pasuk, the pasuk immediately preceding that pasuk, he calls it tamid, he calls it eternal or constant. So why the change? In Taka, we have Rashi's answer, Lahalis Ner Tamid, that it's because it happens on a regular basis, so it's called tamid. But still, why don't you just say straight up, Me'erev ad Boker, why are you calling it tamid? So to answer these questions, the Rebbe brings the biurim of the Frierdiker Rebbe on these very questions. So the Frierdiker Rebbe in his Maimer V'Kibul HaYehudim, Tafresh Pezayin, which the Rebbe himself calls B'Ma'amorei HaYedua, the Frierdiker Rebbe's famous Maimer of the Purim Kot and Tafresh Pezayin, the Frierdiker Rebbe explains these questions as follows. The inyan of Tetzaveh is Pnimius and Yonim, a lotion of connection. As we see also in the word that the shadish, that the word tetzaveh actually shares a shadish with tzaveh v'chibur, with connection and attachment. So v'ata tetzaveh, the Eibishter is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that you should connect the Yidden to the Ein Sof. Because we're doing a review, but we're going to start from Dalet. So the Eibishter is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that you should attach the Yidden to the Ein Sof. V'ata, and that's why it says v'ata, you Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who connects the Yidden to the Ein Sof. And through that, v'yikhoy lecha, when Moshe Rabbeinu connects and attaches the Yidden to the Ein Sof, v'yikhoy lecha, Moshe Rabbeinu gets a certain thing that he didn't have before that, dafka through this that he connected the Yidden. So you have Moshe Rabbeinu standing on a very high madrega, and over here Moshe Rabbeinu starts working with the Yidden who are on a lower madrega than Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the pasuk, through this that you're going to work with the Yidden, you're busying yourself. Instead of working with yourself, you're busying yourself with people who are on a lower level than you. Says the pasuk, nevertheless, that you will gain something, you will have this idea of Shem and Zayis Zach. And in order to explain these ideas, the Frierdiker Rebbe starts touching on the essence of what a Rebbe is, or Akopan, what a Raya Mehemne is. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says like this, that Moshe Rabbeinu is called the Raya Mehemne, he's called the faithful shepherd, but really there's another pirush in Raya Mehemne, that he's the shepherd of faith. In other words, he shepherds, he provides faith for the Yidden. What does this mean that he provides faith for the Yidden? The Yidden are Ma'aminim b'nei Ma'aminim. So he explains like this, that Amunah is a strange thing. Amunah comes from the core of a Yid, comes from the depths of a Yid. Every single Yid by default has Amunah, is Ma'aminim b'nei Ma'aminim. He has it as his inheritance. But nevertheless, it could be in a very abstract way, in a very distant way. It's not part of his day-to-day life, like the mashal that the Frierdiker Rebbe gives in his Maimers from the Gemara of Ganva Pumachtat Rachmane Karya, that the thief, when he's standing on the entrance of his hideout before he's ready to set out and do his work of the day to go and steal, he calls out to the Eibishter, asking him, "Please give me success in my work." And the Frierdiker Rebbe asks, "L'chora, it's not self-consistent. It's contradictory. In what he's doing, he's doing things that contradict each other." How's he contradicting himself? He's davening to the Eibishter. So in other words, he acknowledges that the Eibishter is the one who provides parnasa, and at the same time, he's saying to do what? To go steal, which is something the Eibishter told him not to do. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains why, because even though he believes that the Eibishter provides parnasa, but he believes this in a very abstract way, that somewhere, as a general idea, the Eibishter has to bless him in whatever it is that he does. But in Pil Mamish, in day-to-day life, if I want to have what to eat, I have to take it. If you want something, take it. If you don't take it, you're not going to have it. And that's why he goes and steals. He without that, he believes that the Eibishter won't find a way how in day-to-day life, in this world, in Gashmi Selam Hazeh, he should actually have parnasa. The Eibishter has to somehow agree to it. But that should actually happen down here in this world and in his life, he has to take action and he has to take things so that he should have them. So that emunah could remain external to the person, not part of his day-to-day life. And it's the job of the Raya Mehemna, the shepherd of faith, to bring this emunah into the day-to-day life of a Yid. Okay? That's the beer of the Frierdiker Rebbe in what a Raya Mehemna is, and what the Rebbe is, and what a Nasi Yisrael is, and what Moshe Rabbeinu was, and what Mordechai did. After explaining this, the Frierdiker Rebbe explains that the meaning of kasis lamoyer is, why does it say kasis lamoyer and not kasis lahoyer? Because dafke when you're crushed, can you reach the madrega of moyer? Can you reach the source of life, of light? When a person is crushed in the time of Golus, through this he reaches a deeper level than Ur. Ur is the madrega that a yid reaches in regular times, in a time when it's not in Golus. In the time of Golus is when the yid reaches not the Ur, not Lahoyer, the Moyer, he reaches the source of light much higher. So the Rebbe asks, what's the connection between explaining that Moshe Rabbeinu brings the Emunah into a Pnimius to the next part of the Maimer where the Frierdiker Rebbe explains that in the time of Golus, the Yid reaches his Moyer, the Yid reaches the deepest level because he's crushed. What's the connection between the two? Okay, that's what we learned in the Maimer until now. So we already have the beginnings of a discussion about Emunah, which we will expand upon later in the Maimer, and also the beginnings of a discussion of a Raya Mehemna of a Rebbe, that the Emunah is takadir, but it could be not part of the day-to-day life. It needs to be brought into the day-to-day life. And a Rebbe, a leader, a Nasi, a Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who brings it into the Yid's day-to-day life. And to explain that, this explanation that we brought from the Frierdiker Rebbe and Va'atat Tetzaveh comes after a different idea that the Frierdiker Rebbe explains. What does the Frierdiker Rebbe explain in his Maimer? The Pirush v'Kibel HaYehudim es asher chelu lasos, that the Yidden accepted upon themselves, and they took upon themselves that which they began doing. So in the Pashtus HaPasuk, what happened is the Yidden fought on Yud Gimel Adar in Shushan and in the rest, and in all of the countries where they lived, and they rested on Yud Daled Adar. And in Shushan Abir, they fought Sayan Yud Gimel and Sayan Yud Daled, and they rested and they celebrated the occasion on Tesvav Adar. And that they did on their own. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't tell them to do it. It was a natural outcome of the great nisim that they saw from the Eibishter on Yud Gimel Adar and on Yud Daled Adar and Shushan, that the next day they celebrated that day. Mordechai told them that they should set this for a special day for a year, as a special Yom Tov, that they should always commemorate this nest that the Eibishter did to them by having it as a joyous day, may mishte v'simcha, and give mishleach manos, ishlere'eo, amatanis levyonim. So the pasuk says that after Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden to do it, v'kibel haYehudim es asher chelu lasos, they accepted upon themselves these things that Mordechai told them now, which were actually things that they started to do themselves already on the first year without Mordechai HaTzadik telling it to them. So how does the Frierdiker Rebbe explain this pasuk, v'kibel haYehudim, that they accepted upon themselves something that they started before, who shekiblu ma she'echelu b'azman de matan Torah, that in the time of the Gzeira of Haman and Achashverosh, the Yidden accepted upon themselves that which they begun during the time of Matan Torah. So when did they take upon themselves the inyanim that happened during Matan Torah? That was dafka during the time of Purim. The Matan Torah haisa ha'aschala. In the time of Matan Torah was only the beginning. In the time of Achashverosh, and more specifically, not after, there's a diak over here, not after they were victorious, but during the time of the Gzeira, Haisa HaKabbalah, that's when they, with finality, took upon themselves the inyanim of Matan Torah, the Kibel HaYehudim. And the Rebbe notes in the brackets, Val Derech Maimer Azal, this pierce of the Frierdiker Rebbe is similar to the Gemara, Al Pasuk Kimu v'Kiblu HaYehudim, that the Yidden accepted upon, or they gave a kiyum, they gave a permanence, and they accepted upon themselves these inyanim, again, that we were discussing before, that Mordechai HaTzadik told them to do. So the Gemara explains, Kimu Mashakiblu, where we're on Kuf Lamed Aleph, the top of Kuf Lamed Aleph. Kimu Mashakiblu, part of the Gemara says that they gave a permanence to that which they already accepted before. Because this, or even more than a permanence, that they actually performed what they accepted. This, that by Matan Torah, the Yidden said Nasiv and Nishma was only that they obligated themselves to do it. They said, okay, we're going to do it. On the times of Achashverosh is when they actually did it. So the Frierdiker Rebbe's Pirush is al derech the Pirush of Chazal of the Gemara on the pasuk Kimu v'Kiblu. Umedayik b'hamaimer, the Frierdiker Rebbe asks on his Pirish, Shalachurahu Dvar Pele, this Pirish of Kibel HaYehudim in Pnimiyas HaInyanim, that during the time of the Gzeda of Haman, they took upon themselves that which they begun during the time of Matan Torah is incomprehensible. It's something that's very hard to understand.
So he's done it.
Yeah.
He's done it.
Yeah.
What's the question? What's incomprehensible? In the time of Matan Torah, the Yidden were on the highest level. And they had the revelation of godliness on the highest in the highest way. In addition to the fact that the Yidden already had received very high revelations from the Eibishter before Matan Torah. First, there was Hagilish Ha'ebi Yetzias Mitzrayim, the revelation of that happened during Yetzias Mitzrayim, Nigla Aleim Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ga'olam. And then it would flat with Kriyas Yamsuf, and then even to a greater extent during Kriyas Yamsuf, when the Yidden said Zeh Keli V'Anvehu, they pointed to the Eibishter, Rasa Shifcha Layam Ma'Shalei Nevim, that even a maidservant during Kriyas Yamsuf, the revelation was so great in two aspects. First of all, it was so high that it was higher than the revelation that was given to the Nevim, and second of all, it came so low, even a shifcha, even a maidservant was able to appreciate it. Stam Loher, I always wonder who this shivcha is. It's a Yiddish shivcha? It's not a Yiddish shivcha. If it's a Yiddish shivcha, what's pshat Yiddish shivcha? There was no... Alle zijn gewen b'nei chayden. The Yidden were just freed. So who's the shivcha? It's a Goyish shivcha. So a Goyish shivcha was able to sing on the Yam. So that's fact, it doesn't say anywhere that the Yidden took out with them shvachis from Mitzrayim. We don't see that anywhere. So who's the shivcha that the Gemara talks about? Ich weiß nicht. I guess you have to touch it. Somebody was on the madrega of a shivcha. But we just said that all of the Yidden were on a very high madrega, right? All of the Yidden were on a very high madrega. So, who is the shivcha? But nevertheless, in addition to those two prior giluyim, the giluyim that occurred during Matan Torah were even greater than that. I'm not sure if this is accurate, but you could see it also in the words by Matan Torah. There was the giluy of Anochi. So he's a king. Over here we're saying Anochi, the Eibishter himself. So the Yidden had great revelations, and it's obviously, it's self-understood that with these great revelations swept the Yidden up to a very high madrega. They were standing after the Aveda of Sfiras HaEmer, when they perfected all of the Midas, and now they were in Tispru Chamishim Yom, they were already in the 50th day, which is Shar Hanun of Bina. And they had all of these revelations from above. And we say that nevertheless, they couldn't complete Matan Torah. The stage of Matan Torah was only a beginning, it wasn't a completion. Ubiyimei Achashverosh, what was the situation during the times of Achashverosh? Hayu Yisrael betachlis hayirida. The Yidden were Rachman Litzlan in the opposite extreme. They were in the ultimate low level. The Neis of La'elam V'Hester Shebechol Golos. In addition to the concealment and the problems of every galus, and Rebbe illustrates that just a bit. The whole galus who bedugmas galus Mitzrayim, because every galus is similar to the galus of Mitzrayim. And what do we see? What happened to the Yidden during the time of galus Mitzrayim? Galus Mitzrayim, it says in the pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Yidden after 210 years, to be exact, 209 and a half years. And he tells them that the Eibishter said that he's taking them out of Galus. And there's a whole arichis of the story, but the bottom line is that it says in the pasuk that they couldn't listen to Moshe, they couldn't accept what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them, because they were so exhausted, they were so out of breath, they were so worn down by their difficult work, which these are the nisyanis. They were stuck in such terrible nisyanis that they couldn't connect with Moshe Rabbeinu's message of Geula. The Navi of the Eibishter himself is standing in front of them and telling them, the Eibishter himself spoke to me and said that I'm taking you out of Golus. And the Yidden say, let me get back to my slavery. I'm going back to be an Eved in Mitzrayim. These stories, I say, we'll tell them to somebody else. Reminds me of a story. I was once in the south of France on the boardwalk in Cannes, I think is how you pronounce the city. In French, everything is very, very strange. Cannes Cannes or Cannes is spelled Canes. Before you drop the S at the end. So we're walking over there on the board. It's a beautiful boardwalk, and in the winter, everybody's fully dressed over there. And there was this magnificent hotel. I forgot what its name is, but a very ornate building, with pillars and statues and a beautiful domed roof. And this is going back to Tafshin und Zion, 1997. So we're walking there, me and three of my friends, and this person, a guy isn't from, pulls out us, Yeshiva Bachrim, kim taher. Yeah, Yeshiva Bachrim, come here. And he shows us his number. It's in 1997. You still have those people walking around. Now you still have K'nayin Hara. They should have Arichas Yami, but much, much less. He shows us his number, and he starts telling us his whole story of how he survived the camps and how he took revenge of Germans, a few Germans that he killed, and a few other things that he did to them after the war. An interesting fellow. And we spoke to him. I don't remember if we had Tefillin with us. We spoke to him. He was very happy to see Yeshiva Bachrim. And as we're leaving, I tell him that we should be zeicha to greet Mashiach Tzidkenu right now.
That's all he needed.
So he blows up on me, tells me, Mashiach, what's Mashiach? I said, there's no Mashiach. So I tell us, the Rambam hat gesagt Mashiach. She says, the Rambam is given a doctor. The Rambam was a doctor. He was a modern guy. He was a man of medicine, of science. The Rambam didn't believe in Mashiach. So, Al Kapanim, of course, this is a Taira Yid. This is a Yid Abam says Nefesh B'Poel Mamash. He's a giant of a man. He stands. But due to the Alamas V'Hestadim of Galus, you can have a situation where you say, let me go back, let me live in Europe, let me live in France in the killing grounds of the Holocaust, and don't come to me with this message of redemption, with this message of Mashiach. I'm not open to it. I can't connect it. I can't hear it. My experience of the Holocaust was too much, and it shut that out for me. So we can understand such a sentiment where Moshe Rabbeinu is standing in front of the Yidden, and he's telling them, Galus is over. The Eibishter himself spoke, and they say, let me go back to my slavery. Let me see what I could do for the Egyptians. It's mitzad the Halamas V'Hestadim. Uk'moishu b'Galus Mitzrayim. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to learn. Al derech zehu b'chol galus sotu, in every galus that we face the same challenges. Sheyeshnam kama nisyenis b'kim ha'teira v'hamitzvos. There are several challenges. There was several, so I'm not going to say there's more than several, but to some of us it could feel like, so, and that's why it applies also to the times that we're living in now. And l'churi, you could say that the Beishis Rabbah, the Medrash says kol hamalchis, which would include even the current malchus of America. Maybe now it's not so hard to envision it, seeing how. Like the Rebbe says, we learned that Sikha, seeing how the Rebbe said that even nations of the world who behave ethically and morally in other areas, suddenly when it comes to the Yidden, they behave in the most unethical and in the most terrible way. So it's a little easier, unfortunately, to see the way America is pushing the Yidden and Eretz Yisrael into a dangerous situation. But like we learned in the next Sikha, we don't have to worry about that because the Eibishter is in charge of the world, and everything will be good. So, Akopanim, even here in America, you have the inyan of Mitzrayim, Al Shem Shem Mitzeres Li Yisrael, it's the inyan of Galus, and therefore there are going to be Halamis V'Hestadim, and therefore it's going to be difficult for us to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs. And especially in the time of Achashverosh, Hinei Oz B'Zman Gzeiras Haman, in the time of the Gzeira of Haman, Hayahelim V'Ester Eides, the concealment and the hidden state of matters of a likus, being in a hidden state, was even more than in regular times, and therefore the nisyenis were even more. And nevertheless, we say that that in the time of Matan Torah, when the Yidden were on the highest level, it was only the beginning. They couldn't complete, they couldn't seal the deal of Matan Torah. And in the time of Gzeres Haman, when the Yidden were in the lowest level, that's the time when they were able to reach this high state of finalizing and fulfilling the idea of Matan Torah. How could that be understood? And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, in the time of the Gzeira, something unique occurred. The performance of Torah and Mitzvahs was with Mesiris Nefesh. And the Rebbe explains in the brackets, in other words, what the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying is with these few words, that in addition to the fact that they had Mesiris Nefesh, to not chas v'shalom shmatzich, to not be kafir in the Eibishter, chas v'shalom not convert or leave their Yiddishkeit, which this was a great act of Mesiris Nefesh on its own. Like the Frierdiker Rebbe, like the Alter Rebbe explains, if the Yidden would leave their religion, chas v'shalom, and declare that they are no longer Jewish, the Goyim wouldn't do anything to them. It was on the nation of the Jews, of the Yehudim. Nevertheless, the Yidden didn't have any foreign, any external thought, chas v'shalom, of leaving the Eibishter, and they remained true to their faith. They remained steadfast as Jews. There was even more Mesiris Nefesh than that. They had Mesiris Nefesh to also perform and fulfill the Torah and Mitzvahs. Like the Rebbe says in Order 28, which this is even a greater novelty. When it comes to Amunah, the fact that they had Amunah and that they wouldn't convert, wouldn't shmadzich, that doesn't show on something special yet. Because even a kal shebekalim, even somebody who doesn't, it shows on something special. But there are higher levels to reach. Because even a kal shebekalim, even somebody who during his life, for years, he's very distant, Rahman al-Islam, from the Eibishter, he also has Mesiris Nefesh. So that's not yet the greatest achievement. Over here, we have an additional achievement that they had Mesiris Nefesh to also perform Torah and Mitzvahs. And even more than that, and furthermore, they gathered assemblies in public to learn Torah. In other words, they risked the wrath of the Goyim at this time when the blood of the Yidden was declared to be cheap. They weren't afraid, and in public, in the face of their enemies and in the face of the people who wanted to harm them and had the power to harm them, they stood up and they showed publicly their Jewishness and their Jewish culture and their Jewish behavior and their adherence to their Yiddishkeit out on the street. So the Mesiris Nefesh in the times of the Gzeira was a Mesiris Nefesh on the highest level. Who brought out the Mesiris Nefesh of the Yidden that it should be in such a high level? Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of the generation, galvanized the Yidden to perform Torah and Mitzvahs, and to be Makel Kilis, to gather assemblies in public and to stay strong to their Yiddishkeit. And with this, the Frierdiker Rebbe explains why Dafka in the time of the Gzeira we have the Kibbul Hayudim, they were able to complete and to finalize and to make permanent that which they began in the time of Matan Torah. The time of Matan Torah was only the beginning of the Zman Gzeres Haman Heisa Kabbalah. And at the time of the Gzeres Haman, that's when they actually accepted and undertook it upon themselves to do those things that the Eibishter told us during the time of Matan Torah. Why? Through this, that the Yidden had Mesiris Nefesh them b'poil al Torah mitzvahs for the sake of Torah mitzvahs. Nisalu b'inyan zeh l'madrega nailis yeser mikmoi shahayu b'zman Matan Torah. The Yidden reached a higher level in this aspect of Mesiris Nefesh than they had during the times of Matan Torah. And therefore, specifically then, the Yidden were able to undertake and finish what they began in the time of Matan Torah, the Kibbul HaYudim. In other words, like this: in the time of Matan Torah, everything was good. There were no challenges to the Yidden. The Eibishter was taking care of them in the desert. They were getting the mon from the Eibishter, and it didn't take Mesiris Nefesh in the time when you see all of the nisim that the Eibishter is doing for you, and the Anani HaKavod are protecting you, and you're in an atmosphere of constant Kedusha, so it doesn't take Mesiris Nefesh to do whatever Aveda it is that you're doing. So even if you're doing an Aveda of the highest level, and you have the greatest revelations, nevertheless, Mesiris Nefesh it's not. And since it's not Mesiris Nefesh, therefore, it couldn't reach deep enough or high enough so that it should seal the deal, so that it should accomplish with finality Matan Torah. In the time of Gzeira Haman, they were missing everything else. They were on the lowest level. Like we know from the story of the Gzeira, why the Gzeira came about. They participated in the feast of Achashverosh. And like the Rebbe says, Nenu misudasa shaloisa harasha. They bragged about it. They said, do you know who Achashverosh invited to his meal, to his feast? Me, the Yid. In other words, they came with a low value to who they are and to what they are, and they took pride in what the Goy is telling them. So they were in a low madrega. Nevertheless, and that didn't change during the time of Gzeira Haman. They didn't reach a high madrega. But that that left them. They didn't suddenly become tzaddikim, and they didn't suddenly have great revelations. They remained in Golus. Akante, even after, like we see later in the Maimer, Akante Avdei Achashverosh. They remained in Golus. But the Mesiris Nefesh was turned on in them. And suddenly they gained the title of Yehudim. I am a Jew. Right? You don't find Yidden called Yehudim in other places in Nach. I believe the Megillah is the first time where Yidden are called Al Shem Yehudi, and like the Gemara says, Shekefer b'chol avodah zarah shebe'elam. He's Maida, he's Yehudi, he's Maida to the Eibishter, and he denies, is like Kefer. The word is escaping me today. Abel, Kefer is was. He's Kefer in every avodah zarah. He
rebels.
Not rebels. But Al Kapanu, he denies and he doesn't believe in any avodah zarah. So this title of Yehudim, the Yidden got that in the time of Gzeira Haman, because of their Mesiris Nefesh, and therefore it was able to achieve and accomplish the idea of Matan Torah, which couldn't be accomplished before. Okay, so to summarize, earlier in the Maimer, before the Bir of Atat Tetzava, before the explanations in the Pasuk of Atat Tetzava, the Frierdiker Rebbe says that there was this time of Kibbul HaYehudim Esasher Echelu Lasos, that Dafke in the time of the Gzeira of Haman, when the Yidden were in a very low level, in the lowest of levels, they were able to reach the highest level of finalizing Matan Torah. And why was that? Because of their Mesiris Nefesh. Who awakened the Mesiris Nefesh within them, especially the Mesiris Nefesh on such a high level? That was Mordechai Tzaddik, the Moshe of his generation, like we had earlier in the Maimer, that the Gemara says that Moshe Shebedere is that Mordechai Bedere is Moshe Bedere. It's not from Megillah, it's from Esther Rabbah, it's from Medrash. Sorry, it's not from Gemara. So the Moshe Rabbeinu of his generation brought out, he awakened the Mesiris Nefesh of the Yidden. And now L'chura, the Rebbe tries to explain in one way why Kasis Lamoyer comes after that. That the Frierdiker Rebbe went through all of this arichas of Kibbul HaYehudim to explain the Mesiris Nefesh of the Yidden, and how dafka through Mesiris Nefesh you reach a high level. That explains us the words in the pasuk Kasis Lamoyer. So let's see how the Rebbe says it. L'chura yeshleima. L'chura you could say Sha'apirish beKasis Lamoyer. The Frierdiker Rebbe explains the word Kasis Lamoyer. Shalidei Kasis. What's the Frierdiker Rebbe's explanation? That through the crushing forces of Galus, Nishbar v'Nidke, that the person is broken and crushed. Megim lahamoir, the person reaches the source of everything within himself. He reaches the highest level. Hu bir al zeh shebizman hagzeira dafka bol im sis nefesh beifin naila b'yes. The Frierdiker Rebbe is trying to explain to us with this Why Dafke Taken was it that in the time of the Gzeda of Haman, the Yidden Taka came to Mesiris Nefesh? Why couldn't they reach the level of Moir, of Mesiris Nefesh in the time of Matan Torah? They reached all of the other levels. They reached the highest levels in all other aspects. Why during the time of Matan Torah couldn't they also do this? If that's what's needed, that you have to also reach the Madrega Mesiris Nefesh, find a way to reach that Madrega, to accomplish that feat of whatever it is the Mesiris Nefesh accomplishes, accomplish it in the time of Matan Torah. Why couldn't they? So that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, he continues, after explaining the whole Kibbutz HaYehudim, he continues to say that this couldn't happen during the time of Matan Torah, because for this to happen, you need Davke Kosis, as follows. Because what are we trying to reach? What are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve the level of Mesiris Nefesh. Says the Frierdiker Rebbe, Mesiris Nefesh comes from the essence of the neshama, which is higher than every revelation. It comes from the source of light from which the light comes from. So now you have a problem. You have a problem. When you say that a person reaches a certain madrega, he reaches a certain level, what are you discussing over here? What are you describing? You're describing levels within the person. In other words, like this. You say a person is trying to teach himself a certain skill. He's trying to learn a certain chachma, a certain a new depth in Gemara. He wants to be able to learn the Ketzos without any problem. And he works on it, and he works on it, and he works on it, until he reaches it, until he's able to do that. What's he working with the whole time? He's working the whole time with his Koach HaSeichel. He's working with his understanding. His understanding is part of what we call Giluyim, the revealed parts of the soul. Everything that a person does in his day-to-day life has to do with his revealed parts of the soul. Let's try to picture a person on a regular day. Stam, a regular Wednesday, the person wakes up in the morning, he says Meidani, washes Negelwasser, goes ahead and says Brachas, goes to Shul and Davins, learns something afterwards, goes to work, gives tzedakah, comes back home, deals with his kids, other mitzvahs that he has to do, learns a little bit more, right? In this whole story over here, do you see the essence of the soul? Do you see the etzem of the neshama? Or do you see things that make a lot of sense? There's a nefesh elikis. What does the nefesh elikis want to do? The nefesh elikis wants to do Torah and mitzvahs. So the nefesh elikis is doing Torah and mitzvahs. You don't see over here the essence of the soul. You see over here the giluyim. There's nothing that calls out the giluyim. I'll try to give a muscle because I'm struggling a little bit to explain it. Let's think about it in the relationship between a father and a child. You have a father and a child. What's the standard regular relationship over here? And if somebody were to analyze, somebody were to look at this relationship and try to understand it, what would he see over here? So he would say, yes, I see that the father loves the child very deeply. Every day, the father spends time with the child. Even when he doesn't spend time with the child, he thinks about what does the child need. He helps him with everything that he needs. He tries to bring out in the child his full potential. He provides the child with safety and security, with love. So he's putting a lot into his child. He has a lot of love for his child. So we see that, yeah, the father loves the child in a very significant way. The person is going to walk away from here and he's going to say like this. The father's love to his child can be explained in a rational way, in a rational sense. In other words, this doesn't come from the essence of the father. It's not pshat that the father and this child are connected in a way that's beyond reason, beyond understanding. From observing the day-to-day interactions, you could say, no, this comes from someplace that makes sense. It makes sense because the father feels very close to the child. So therefore, he gives him all of these things. But still, because it makes sense, because the father understands the child, he feels the child, he loves the child. The person will point out that you could also see limitations on it. Sometimes the child comes to the father and he asks him, Tati, can I do this or that? Can you help me with this or that? And the father might say, not right now. Right now, I have to do I have to do this, that, or the other. There's something else that I have to do right now. Come back to me, or I'll come back to you later tonight or tomorrow. We'll set a good time and we'll take care of it. So the person observing this says, look, you see, there's limitations to the love of the father to the child. He doesn't go all out. So during day-to-day life, the relationship between the father and the child is only on a level of Giluyim, is only on a level of the revealed parts of the father, where the father is thinking, the father is what's called today emoting, he's showing emotions, and it comes with certain limitations. When can you see the true connection between the father and the child? Dafke chas v'shalom, when things go very bad. If chas v'shalom, the child is in some sort of trouble, real trouble, then suddenly all of the rules fall to the wayside. We shouldn't know. But you see, people, their entire life is put on hold. Not only put on hold means that they think, oh, I'll get back to it soon. They're not operating in such a way that they drop it like it's irrelevant, insignificant. It doesn't matter to them at all. And they dedicate themselves with everything they have, plus much, much more, to do everything for the welfare of this child. Now the person observing this says, oh, hold on. The love of a father to the child is not something rational. It goes much, much deeper than rational. It is something that touches the essence of the father, that will move the father to such a degree that he will give himself for the sake of his child. And that's not on the level of Giluyim. That's not something that he sees suddenly because the father is thinking differently. He sees a new thought process by the father. He doesn't see a new thought process by the father. He doesn't see new emotions. The father expressed his love to the child before expressing it now. Now he sees something else. He sees a Mesiras Nefesh. He sees the father completely setting himself aside entirely and wholeheartedly and dedicating himself to the welfare of the child. Over here, you see the atzmistic connection, that not the connection on the level of Giluyim, the connection on the level of the etzem. When can this be witnessed? When can this new understanding of the depth of the love and connection between the father and the child be witnessed? Not on a regular day. You'll never see it on a regular day. You'll only see it in times of kasis, in times when things are being crushed. That's when dafka you'll see it. So that's l'chura. The Rebbe says, we could say that that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe is explaining, that during Matan Torah, notwithstanding all of the great Giluyim, but Giluyim, ration, emotion, can never touch the etzem, because the etzem, the essence is higher than Giluyim, can't express itself in Giluyim. It can only express itself when everything else falls apart, when you have no Giluyim. Going back now to the Nimshal, you have no Ava to the Eibishter, you have no Yira to the Eibishter, you have no Hasaga in a Likus. Like the Rebbe says in a different manner, even a Ratzin to a Likus you don't have. And you look at a Yid in this situation, and what does the Yid do in this situation? There's the famous Ani L'Doide V'Doide Limaimer of the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe brings the mashal of a Melech Basada. So I don't believe there's a person in the world today. I mean, in ganz Welt, people accept it as a medrash. That's how famous this part of the Alter Rebbe and how well accepted the mashal of Melech Basada. People push it honestly and sincerely, without meaning to take away credit from the Alter Rebbe. Say like that we're in Chodesh Elul, and the medrash says, then in Chodesh Elul the Melech is Basada. So it's very, very famous. However, the Maimer continues with a very harsh discussion of a person and where he's holding. There's there was a mashpia in Lubavitch. His name was Rav Michal Bliner, or Rav Michal der Alter. They say about him that he took the Alter Rebbe's Maimer of Ani L'Doide V'Doide Li, and he learned it al libed nafshe. He learned it and he took it to heart, and thought to himself, where is he standing in the inyanim that the Maimer talks about? And from the tremendous pain, today we would call it trauma, but it's not trauma, because trauma is where you run away from it. He didn't want him running away from it. But from the tremendous pain, every time that he would see this Maimer, his eyes would run with tears. What does it say in this Maimer? It says in this Maimer like this: you have a Yid who's supposed to love the Eibishter and supposed to fear the Eibishter. And it's in the time of Chodesh Elul, a time of closeness. And nevertheless, the Yid doesn't love the Eibishter and doesn't feel the Eibishter. The Alter Rebbe says that this is because of his grobkeit, because of his lowness, because of he's a brute, he's coarse. And the Alter Rebbe says, so what's the person supposed to do? The person is supposed to be misbeinen. This person is supposed to meditate upon himself, upon the sorry and sordid situation that he finds himself in, that he is so distant from the Eibishter, and he doesn't even care about it. And this is supposed to bring him to a tremendous awakening of tshuva. And the Alter Rebbe says, but what if there's a person who does that and he's still not moved? He's still not moved, he's still not touched. And these were the words that the Bechol the Alter was learning. And he thought it applied to himself. if it applied to him, I don't know what we could say about ourselves. But he took it to that he's this complete disaster. What does the Alter Rebbe conclude with? So what should the person do? What should the person do? It says the Alter Rebbe as follows. The person should fast. Fast. Deny himself food. In order to break his body, which is, his body is so proud of itself, and his body is so indulgent in the materialism of this world, he needs to break his body. And when he'll break his body, then he'll be able to feel his distance from the Eibishter, and that feeling of his distance from the Eibishter will awaken him and bring him closer to the Eibishter. That's what the Alter Rebbe says in this moment. And I'm thinking to myself, of course, based on everything we learn in the Rebbe's Ma'amarim, that there's a certain derher over here. That Mechol de Bliner had one derher. But there's also another derher in this Ma'amar. Look at the greatness of a Yid. What's the Alter Rebbe saying over here? The Alter Rebbe is giving somebody advice that he thinks he will actually take. The Alter Rebbe is saying that you could be a Yid who doesn't feel love and fear of the Eibishter, who even after meditating upon it and thinking about it still doesn't cause him any feelings. And not only that, he doesn't even care that it doesn't cause him any feeling. The Alter Rebbe is saying that what does such a Yid do? Such a Yid will go to the extreme of fasting because of this. Do you understand what we're dealing with over here? The preciousness, the greatness of a Yid, the tremendous force that a Yid has within him, that even when it means zero to him, he's willing to fast in order to bring himself closer to the Eibishter. In other words, this is an essential connection that can't be broken, that transcends and goes beyond anything that he feels in his day-to-day life, any of his own faculties, any of his own understanding, any of his own feeling. He's willing to hurt himself in order to bring himself closer to the Eibishter. That's the greatness of a Yid. So you see the situation from the Alter Rebbe, where he's saying that even Ratzin, the Rebbe also mentions this point, doesn't make a connection between the two Ma'amarim, but in V'shafti B'shalom, Tavshin Lamed Ches, the Rebbe makes this point that there could be a situation where even a Ratzin to be close to the Eibishter is lacking by a Yid. Even a Ratzin. Doesn't even bother him, doesn't even care. So the Yid has nothing left. In Giluyim, he's holding by zero. Why? Because of Golus that crushes him. So now he's very crushed. You're very crushed. Now there's the potential, there's the ability to bring out the essence. Because the essence of a person can never express itself through his mind. It can never express itself through his heart. It can only express itself in things, in complete and absolute and absence of anything, where the person is completely crushed and he has nothing. Like the father's essential love to his son can't be expressed when he's talking to him, when he's helping him grow, when he's working with him, when he's giving him attention and love. A love is being expressed over here, but the essential connection can't be expressed through that. Dafka, when everything is taken away, that's when you see the father's love to his child, that he's losing everything. And because he's losing everything now, his essential connection comes out. He no longer operates based on ration, based on reason, based on what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. The observer now sees, no, this connection is way beyond it, because we took away ration. This touched him deeper, and it took away all of his keiches hageluyim. So the same thing, that we want to reach the ma'ir, we want to reach the essence of the Yid, the source of everything, and through giluyim, through madregas, through high levels, through the seichel of the nefesh elokis, through the ava and yira of the nefesh elokis, l'chura even through the ratzon of the nefesh elokis. You can't reach that, and that's why during the time of Matan Torah the Yidden could not reach that. Dafka in the time of Golus. When every single one of their revealed faculties was taken away. Because, as we see in their day-to-day life, they weren't behaving as Yidden should. That situation brought out Nisgala Etam HaNeshama, that now when they felt the repercussions of that they were challenged with their very life because of their Yiddishkeit, now suddenly their essence came out. The Kechem Mesiris Nefesh, the Moir came out, and now they were able to finish with that power, with that depth of the Moir, of the source of the Neshama, or the source within the Neshama. They were able to complete Matan Torah. Okay, so l'chura, that's the beard of the Frierdiker Rebbe. That why during Matan Torah the Yidden couldn't have Mesiris Nefesh. By the time of Xer Samni, you could have Mesiris Nefesh, because Mesiris Nefesh comes from the essence of the soul. The essence of the soul can never be revealed by rational thinking, by emotion, in regular day-to-day time. And therefore, in the time of Matan Torah, the Yidden just couldn't call out the essence of their soul. In the time of Haman, when we removed all of the Keches HaGeluyim, and now we only had the Etzem HaNeshama, where the Yid was being pushed against the corner, and he was told, listen, you're a nobody, you're a loser, you're a low-life, sign your Ruchnius and sign your Gashmius, your life is going to be taken away from you. Now suddenly something touched him to his core, to his essence, and he stands with Mesiris Nefesh, the person who just yesterday was by Achashverosh's party. Today he stands with Mesiris Nefesh, Barabim, outside in public in front of all of the Goyim, and he learns Torah in your face. And that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe brings the Pirush of Kasis Lamoyer after the story of Kibbul HaYehudim. But the Rebbe comes back and says, no, there must be some other aspect to this, and the end of Eis Dalet connects to the end of Eis Gimel. Avol, says the Rebbe, mehem shech v'seder ha'inyanim b'hamaimen, from the continuation and the order of topics in the Maimen. Shahapirush b'Kasis Lamoyer bala achrei ha'inyan deraya mehemna, that the explanation in Kasis Lamoyer comes after the Frierdiker Rebbe explains the idea of Raya Mehemna, of the shepherd of faith, that a Rebbe, a Nazi, a Moshe Rabbeinu, brings faith to the Yid that it should be part of his day-to-day life. Mashma, the Inyan Kasis Lamoyer Shaykh Gam Lazesha Moshe Zonim Afanis Asamuna Shatir B'Pnimius. That the idea of Kasis Lamoyer, the idea of that Dafka through being crushed, the Yid reaches the deepest part within himself, the essence of his soul, also has to do with Moshe Rabbeinu's work of feeding the Emunah to a Yid B'Pnimius. And this is something that requires a lot of explanation. We're talking about feeding Emunah B'Pnimius. If you're saying it's coming B'Pnimius, we're talking about the Keches HaGeluyim again. What does it mean that we're feeding the Emunah B'Pnimius? And why Dafka do you need the Moshe Rabbeinu to do it? What's there before Moshe Rabbeinu does his work, and what do we have afterwards? And how in the world do we say that it comes down into the Pnimius? And to understand all that, we're going to continue the long journey through the Maimon until at the end, Be'ezus Hashem will have a good understanding of that. If Chas V'Shalom Mashiach doesn't come before then, next week's share will be after Purim. Maybe the Eibishter's will that just like on Yud Gimel Adar, already before Purim, the Yidden had the full victory over their enemies, so too now with the situation in Eretz Yisrael, already before Purim comes, and it doesn't have to be Yud Gimel Adar, it could be today Tes Adar, that the Yidden should be completely victorious, and our celebration of Purim will be after the victory of the Yidden over all of their enemies.
Oh,
Afreilichem Purim.
amazing. So,